International Rescue Committee, IRC. Markusha, a former supporter of communism turned American patriot like her husband, marveled at the displaced Russians' desire of bloody revenge against Stalin, and periodically attached anti-communist manifestos penned by her new Russian friends to the letters she sent home to the United States. Here, she explained to Lewis, was a Soviet Russia we had never known, a generation of Russians who had come of age under Stalin, yet were eager to fight his tyrannical regime. Soon, more powerful Americans replicated the Fischer's discovery and patronage of the Russian anti-communists in Germany. In the late 1940s, the Truman administration, amidst fears of communist expansionism and subversion, launched a program of covert operations against the USSR and its newly formed bloc of satellite states in Europe. As part of this effort to go on the offensive in the Cold War, the new Central Intelligence Agency, CIA, offered covert assistance to underground resistance movements, guerrillas, and refugee liberation groups representing the peoples under communist rule. The Russian communities championed by the Fischers appeared to be ideal recruits for such combat on the clandestine front. Indeed, the Russian co-editor of 13 Who Fled, Boris Alexandrovich Troitsky-Yakovlev, became the head of the Institute for the Study of the History and Culture of the USSR in Munich, funded by the Central Intelligence Agency. Other Russians, many of whose biographies resembled those of the 13, would carry out U.S.-funded covert operations aimed at destabilizing the USSR, which included producing anti-communist propaganda in Russian, sending agents on secret missions into the USSR, and seeking to convince Soviet soldiers and administrators in East Germany to defect to the West. This book tells the story of Russian exiles' roles in the Cold War in Europe. What were the agendas of Russian anti-communists, and how did the U.S. government seek to promote them as part of the Cold War? What forms did their collaboration take, and how did the Soviet state seek to thwart these subversive activities? These lines of inquiry bring into focus a distinct political sphere that took shape within the wider Cold War in Europe. The Russian émigrés were the symbols and potential architects of an anti-Soviet Russia, and therefore they became the object of the designs of policymakers and intelligence officials from different countries. As conveyed by the publication history of 13 Who Fled, anti-communist Russians in Europe became actors in a Cold War enterprise that involved secret intelligence operations, deceptive propaganda, and the forging of unexpected alliances. An anti-communist troika, Russian exiles, Americans, and Germans. A central theme of this book is the interaction of ideas and identities among different actors involved in Cold War plots to free Russia. The approach adopted here is transnational, meaning one that focuses on connections, borrowings, exchanges, and influences across borders and national categories. Political emigrations are inherently transnational in nature, as they serve as nodes of physical, intellectual, and cultural exchange among their country of origin, their land of exile, and sometimes third countries embroiled in their affairs, such as the United States, in the case discussed here. The American Emigre Project to Liberate Russia created an institutional and political framework in which different national brands of anti-communism interacted, producing ambitious political agendas as well as chronic strains and misunderstandings. What follows is an introduction to the three main political contexts from which U.S. plans to subvert Soviet rule in Russia emerged: American anti-communism, the Russian diaspora, and Cold War conflict in divided Germany. American support for anti-communist Russian exiles was, to an extent, a logical development of the Cold War. As early as the Russian Civil War, the Wilson administration had not only participated in the Allied military intervention in Soviet Russia, but also launched the kind of covert political measures against the Bolshevik regime that would become common during the Cold War. Little wonder that soon after the anti-Hitler alliance in World War II collapsed in the 1940s and East-West tensions set in, Washington turned to the task of subverting the Soviet regime from abroad. At root, U.S. support of the Bolsheviks' exiled opponents